All right, well, good morning. Welcome. Good to see you here on this beautiful, rainy Sunday. And you made it. You're here. And if you're brand new today, if this is your first or second time here, just want to welcome you. I would love to meet you at our 10-minute party right after the service. My name is Todd. I'm one of the pastors here. It's hard to believe that it's Christmas time. How many of you are ready for Christmas this year? That's not a good sign. Not a good sign. We got to step up our game here. We are ready for Christmas here at Mosaic. We've got two Christmas Eve services here at the Hope Center, 4 o'clock and 5:30. You probably saw one of these cards on your seat, or you got one on the way in. You can use this to invite a friend, a coworker, maybe a neighbor to one of our Christmas Eve services. And we've got kids' experiences for both of those services as well. It's going to be a great time as we celebrate Jesus together on Christmas Eve. We've been in a series called Glow over the last several weeks, talking about how to live a life, living a life that matters. And let me ask you a question. How many of you have had a moment of clarity in your life where you realized at some point that you were becoming someone that you didn't really want to be? Have you had a moment like that? You were becoming something, or you're becoming someone that you didn't really want to be, you never intended to be, but you just kind of became this kind of person. I've had many of these experiences in my time, and one in particular that stands out when I was 19 years old. So let me give you some context for this. So I grew up in a Christian home. So my parents are Christians. My sister is a Christian. We went to a Lutheran church, and my dad always says, wherever there are 4 Lutherans, there's always a 5th. And some of you will get that on the way home. But anyway, we were Christian people. Okay, we went to Sunday school and youth group and service every single week. We ate at Chick-fil-A. Like we were good Christian people. Okay, and so but when I was 15 years old, I went off the rails in every possible way. I started getting into drugs, and I dropped out of high school. You were looking at a high school dropout in the flesh on the stage right here before you at 16 years old, and I moved out of my mom's house, and I got my own place, and I got my own job, and I was blazing my own trail. Unfortunately, it was not really a good trail, okay, because it was full of all kinds of really bad things. And a lot of this was happening because of the people that I was with and that I was associating with. And I started doing some pretty hardcore drugs. And I remember one night we were doing cocaine. Okay, now, I do not recommend doing cocaine by telling this story, but I was doing this this particular night, and we had been doing cocaine all night long. So at the end of the night, it was about 7 a.m., all right? And we did our last bit of drugs, and I leaned back on my friend's green leather couch, and I looked up in the air, and I saw his ceiling fan spinning round and round, and I thought to myself, I think my heart is going to pop out of my chest because of all the toxins I put in my body. And I had this moment of clarity, of realization that I'd become something that I never intended to become. My parents never raised me that way. The Lutheran, all the Lutheran services that I've been to, they never taught that stuff, but I'd become something I'd never wanted to be. And then some of you know my story. I was adopted as a baby, and so I grew up my entire life never knowing my biological parents. And then 2 years ago, I went on a journey to find my birth mom, and I found her. And when I started to get to know her after a few months, I asked her this question. I said, hey, so what's up with my birth dad? Like what's the rest of my story? I've been waiting almost 30 years to hear it. And she told me. And she gave me all the grit and all the details. And she told me about the boyfriend who was the drug dealer, who was also my biological father. And it's really interesting because between her age of 15 and 19, there are so many similarities between my story and hers. And she had this moment when she was 18 years old. She was taking drugs. She was taking heroin, distributing heroin to someone. And she got busted by an undercover narcotics agent. And she was sentenced to prison. As an 18-year-old girl, she was sentenced to prison. She's literally sitting in a jail cell, looking out of the bars and thinking to herself, I've become someone that I never thought I would be. I've become someone that I never intended to be. I think we all have these moments in life where somewhere along the way, at some point in time, we have this realization. We're becoming someone, we're becoming something that we never really wanted to be, and we don't even like ourselves in those times. And here's the important thing. We're all becoming someone, okay? Here's the question. Are you good with who you are becoming? And I would argue that this is true of the church as well. And over the last 2,000 years, I believe the church has become something that it never intended to be. And let me just kind of give you some funny examples of this. So in the South, a lot of churches in the South, outside the church building, they have a church sign. Have you ever driven by a church building outside there was a church sign? Have you ever seen one of these church signs? And maybe they had a sarcastic saying or phrase on the sign. Have you ever seen one of these? These are notorious for the Southeast primarily, okay? But these are really, really interesting signs, and they're telling, and I want to just show a few to you. I've got them listed here on the board. This is around Easter time. It says, "The Easter Bunny didn't rise from the dead." Just in case you didn't know. Next one is, "The party in hell has been canceled due to fire." It's great. "Choose the bread of life or your toast." That's a good one. "I'm also making a list and checking it twice." God. "Lent is coming, get your ash in church." You like that one? It's great. We can't leave the Methodists out. They say, "Don't let worries kill you, let the church help." Oh man, a lot of truth in that, But anyway, as I was saying, over the 2,000 years, some 2,000 years since Jesus began the first church, I believe that the church has become something that it never intended to become. See, these signs they're hilarious, but they're also telling us something. That this is what a lot of churches believe, that the church is a place, the church is a location, the church is a club. And if you act like us, if you talk like us, if you kind of get on board with us, then you can be with us. And if you do all these things and you agree with us, then you can belong to us. And the church is a building, and the church is a time that happens on Sunday morning between 9 and 10:30 a.m. And that's church. But Jesus didn't have this concept of church in mind. Okay, and I want to look at the passage on which this series is based with you. If you have your Bibles, go ahead and turn to Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5, this is going to be on the screens as well. And this is what Jesus says about the church. I'm going to read it to you in the Message translation. He says this, "Here's another way to put it. You are here to be light." And another translation literally says that you're the light of the world and bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket. Oh, no. I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I put you there on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep an open house. Be generous with your lives. You know what Jesus is saying here? He's saying, you are the church. You are the light of the world. So go shine. Go take my hope. Go take my love into an unbelieving world. You don't need a sign outside of your building. You are the sign of God because you are the church of God. And Jesus practiced this. He didn't just say it. He practiced it. In fact, if you read the Gospels, you see that Jesus spent more time with people, eating, drinking, walking, hanging out with people, a lot of the wrong crowd. Types of people that didn't feel like they belonged in religious circles. He hung out with those types of people, and he hung out with people more than he spent time in the temple. And what he's telling us is like, church isn't a building. It's not a place. It's not a time that happens on Sunday morning. The church is not a club. We are the church. We don't need a church sign. You are the church sign because you are the church of God. So I want to talk to you for a few minutes about this idea of we are the church. We are the church. And so I believe that if we're going to become the church that Jesus died for, then we have to make 3 shifts in our lives. If you're taking notes, you can write these down. The first is this. If we're going to become the church that Jesus died for, we have to move, we have to shift from existing to being passionate people. We have to shift from just existing in our lives to becoming passionate followers of Jesus. And I want to read you a passage. It's found in Romans chapter 13. And as I read this passage to you, I want you to notice the passion. I want you to notice the urgency of the writer here. I'm going to pick it up in verse 11 if you want to follow along. It's going to be on the screens as well. But I want you to notice the passion in the tone of the writer. The writer, his name is Paul. He wrote this in about 55 to 57 AD. He's nearing the end of his life. And this is what he says. This is all the more urgent, for you know how late it is. Time is running out. Notice the urgency. Wake up, for our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. The night is almost gone. The day of salvation will soon be here. So remove your dark deeds like dirty clothes and put on the shining armor of right living. Listen to what Paul says. He says, the time is running out. The day is gone. Wake up. He's literally saying, church, wake up. This is crazy because he wrote this almost 2,000 years ago. This gives us a window into the thoughts of the disciples. The disciples literally believed that Jesus was going to come back in their lifetime. So there's this urgency, there's this passion, there's this excitement that Paul's like saying, listen, we've got to get ourselves together. We've got to get passionate about what we're doing. We've got to get passionate about our lives. We've got to get passionate about what God has called us to do. Time is running out. This is what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 13. This precedes the place where Jesus says that you are the light of the world. This is what he says in verse 13. He says, you are the salt of the earth. And what good is salt if it loses its flavor? What good is salt if it loses its saltiness? You know, a part of what he's saying is, what good is salt if it loses its spice? If it loses its edge, if it loses its passion. We're called to be passionate followers of Jesus, passionate in our marriages, passionate in our jobs, passionate as a parent, passionate in our lives. You know, here at Mosaic, we're passionate about a lot of things. Now, we don't have it all figured out. I'll be the first to admit, if you're looking for a perfect church, this is not the place for you because we don't have it all together, but we're passionate about a few things. Number one, we're passionate about breaking the rules. We love breaking the rules because we believe that rules, should be broken. And some of you don't know this, but there's an unspoken rule in the church. It's a dirty, dirty rule, but it's an unspoken, unwritten rule that the church has, that Sunday is the most segregated day of the week. We are passionate about breaking that rule every single time. You know why? Because we're passionate about being a diverse community of faith. This passion drives us, it shapes us, it's moving us along. We're passionate about becoming a diverse community of faith. We're so passionate about it that we are planting a South campus in 2017. It's kind of crazy, but we kind of just believe that Charlotte doesn't need another church, but Charlotte needs another diverse community of faith, especially in the South part of Charlotte. We're passionate about people coming to faith in Jesus because we believe that in every fiber of our being that if you have a relationship with Jesus, that he can put this love in you, this hope in you, this joy in you, this peace in you. He can give you this purpose that you've never experienced before and the world cannot offer you. See, we're passionate about these things here as a community. We're passionate. We're a passionate community. And let me ask you this. What are you passionate about? Let me ask you, are you living right now? Are you living out of a sense of urgency? Are you living out of a sense of passion in your marriage, as a parent, in your jobs? Are you passionate about what you're doing, or are you just existing? And could it be that this morning, the writer here, Paul, is talking to us when he says, hey, wake up. Wake up. The time is near. The day is gone. Get passionate about your life. Get passionate about what God has called you to do. I know what some of you are thinking. You're like, Todd, I don't even know what I should be passionate about. Like, this whole faith thing is just brand new to me. And that's great. And we would love to help you as a kind of a leadership. And we have something here at Mosaic called Leadership Nights. And Leadership Nights is all about navigating and helping you process what God has called you to and the passion that he's placed in your soul. If you want to be a part of that, you can text Leadership Night to this number on the screens. And a new semester for that class starts in January. And it's a once-a-month class, and you can be a part of that, and you can kind of begin that journey of finding what you're passionate about. But we see, if we're going to become the church that Jesus died for, we have to shift from existing to being passionate. And the second shift, if you're taking notes, write this down. We have to shift from being a consumer to a server. We have to shift from being a consumer, having a consumer mentality where it's all about me, to having a server mentality where it's all about others and what I can do for others. Let me ask you this question. How many of you have met someone or you know someone that when you talk to them, when you have conversations with them, it's all about them? Like the only thing they can talk about is themselves. Like what's going on in their world, their problems, their issues, and all. Does anybody know anyone like that? Like when you walk into, there's like, this is great, this is awesome. Hands going up all over the place. Don't point at anyone, but just think about this person. It's like when you may not even be having a conversation with them. They're having a conversation in the same room as you, but they just dominate the conversation because it's all about them. You know someone like that? You see, these people are some of the most uninteresting people on the planet, right? Because they're only interested in themselves. And by the way, it's really cute, like when you're 7, and it's like your child. You're like, oh, that's so cute, but it's not cute when you're an adult. And see, what makes us interesting people is because we're interested in others. The scriptures say it this way in Philippians chapter 2 and verse 4. It says, don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too. Don't get wrapped up in your own world. Don't just talk about your own stuff and your own challenges, but be interested in others too. Many of you know that we're doing a Christmas offering next Sunday, December 11th. We're so excited about this Christmas offering, and it's kind of a two-part offering. We're coming together next Sunday to bring a financial gift above your tithes and to invest in the next generation. And this is really important to us because we've got currently about 25 to 30 youth that are a part of our community. But we have, over the last 12 months, we have increased our attendance, and especially our young families, by about 20% over this time last year. And so we have even more families, more youth attending here at Mosaic. And so we want to take this opportunity to invest and hire a full-time youth pastor the beginning of next year. We're super excited about it. And also what we're doing is we're coming together next Sunday to bring these bags. You probably got one of these bags. Full of non-perishable food items. Now, if you didn't get one of these bags, you can just bring a regular bag. Doesn't have to be this bag. But what we're doing is, and it's gonna be really sweet, okay? Because next Sunday, when you walk up, you're gonna see the mobile food bank front and center, and we're all gonna just put these bags in the mobile food bank and then walk in the door. It's gonna be really awesome. And we're trying to raise 150 bags of non-perishable food items. Now, some of you don't know the backstory of why we're doing this. And about 2 months ago, our staff sat down with some of the staff from the Winding Springs Elementary School, and they told us what I'm about to tell you. And they said, we have 1,000 students at our elementary school, and 100% of them are on government subsidy for lunch. Half of them, so 500 of these students, are undernourished at some point during the school year. And the Winding Springs has identified 150 of their students that are severely undernourished. especially during the holiday season. And so when they're sharing this story to our staff, we are literally just leaning in. We're leaning in. We're like, what can we do? We can't serve every need in Charlotte, but we can serve this need. Guess what? Winding Springs is 3 miles away from the Hope Center. And we were just leaning in when they told us this, and we were like, okay, we want to jump on board with this. We want to get our community and serve this need. We want to shift from being a consumer to being a server. You know what the secret sauce to making this shift is? You know what the key element is to making this shift? Is margin. Margin. If you're taking notes, write this down. Margin allows me to take advantage of opportunities. Margin allows us as a church to take advantage of serving opportunities. And I'll just give you a quick example of this. My wife and I, when we first got married almost 16 years ago, we were a financial train wreck, okay? So we had the financial IQ of a gnat at this particular time of our lives. And if you list out all the stupid things you could do with your money, we did them all. In fact, if you're here and you're newly married or you're gonna get married or whatever, we would love to have coffee with you and we could give you a list of 1,000 things we did wrong, and we could just tell you, just avoid all of this. And then about 10 years ago, we got our finances together, all right? And you know what we did? We sat down and we figured out how to create financial margin in our lives. And we scratched and we clawed and we paid off debt and we got on a budget and we lived on beans and rice for years. And we made it to the point where this past week we got together and we were talking, we were thinking, we were processing like, well, what can we give to the Christmas offering? We have savings. And by the way, as a consumer for us, you know, we lived on 110% of our income. Anybody have a story about that? Yeah, 110%. You can do the math later. So that was the problem. We were living on more than we were making. And no wonder the math didn't work out. And now this is just our story. We live on 80% of our income. We live on 80%. You know what that's done? It gives us margin. It allows us to take advantage of opportunities. So this Christmas offering, we have a dollar amount. Like we're giving to this. This is amazing. We're so excited about this. We're so overjoyed that we can be a part of this. And I know there's some of you here that you want to invest in the next generation. Like you want to give non-perishable food items to these kids, but you can't because you don't have margin. And I just want to say on top of that if that's you, there is no guilt, okay? There is no shame. But I want to just say this. If you can start today, why don't you start today? Maybe you can't be a part of the Christmas offering, but maybe you can decide today. And this is a great time of the year, right? Because we're on the verge of a brand new year. Why don't you start today to figure out how to carve out and create some financial margin in your life? Get on a budget, pay down the debt. But you know, margin doesn't just have to do with our finances. We have emotional margin, spiritual margin, physical margin in our calendars, right? As I read the Gospels and the life of Jesus, you know what I've never read? I've never read that Jesus was in a hurry. Like ever. I've never seen a place where Jesus said, hey, Peter, I got to run, man, because I'm late to this thing. I got to go. It's never happened. You know why? Because Jesus lived out this principle of margin. He had margin in his calendar. He had time to spend with his Father. He had time to spend with his disciples. He had time to spend with people to serve humanity. You see, when we have margin in our lives, financially, spiritually, emotionally, physically, in our calendars, it allows us to take advantage of opportunities. And we shift from being a consumer to being a server. Let me give you the third shift. If you're taking notes, write this down. If we want to really become the church that Jesus died for, we have to shift from feeling inadequate to embracing our influence. We have to shift from feeling insecure and inadequate to really living out our influence. And about 6 months ago, I got invited to a conference in Europe, and the conference centered around bringing together the American church leaders with some of the European church leaders. And it was all about this theme of how to grow the European church. So if you know statistics about the European church, there's about 3% of the European population consider themselves Christian. And it's just an incredible problem, so much so that currently there is a whole generation of young people growing up who have never heard the name of Jesus. And it's hard for us to wrap our minds around that in the Bible Belt here in the South. But it's true, and it's happening. So we're coming together, the European church leaders with the American church leaders, and we're thinking through, processing, how can we plant more churches in Europe? How can we grow the church in Europe? So I got invited to this, and then we went to it last month. And so on the way, my wife and I, honestly, we didn't have any idea what we were getting into. And we're just kind of going. We're like, okay, we've been invited to this, and we're just going to go. And so when we got there, we got the booklets that had the itinerary for the entire conference. And so we opened the book, and inside the book has our picture and the name, all the names, and our names, and then it had all the pictures and names of all the other people that were a part of this conference. And when we looked at all the other names, we thought, we are in the wrong place. Like, I don't know what happened. Maybe something got, lines got crossed here, but we are in the wrong place. How do we get invited to be a part of this? And you know what, it would have been so easy for us to feel inadequate in that moment and not embrace our influence at this conference. And then we were on the second night of this conference, and we're having dinner with this church. It's based out of London, and we're kind of just problem solving with them. And the guy that I'm sitting next to, his name is Actor, which was just a really cool name. I had to ask him to tell me his name like 4 times. I'm like, what is it? He said, Actor. Okay. I was like, I'm sorry, what is it? Actor. And so his name is Actor, by the way. And so it was just a really cool guy. He was a Pakistan guy, but he had a British accent because he grew up in London. So I'm looking at him, and I'm thinking, you look like Naeem, but you sound like 007. I don't know what's going on here, but he tells me this story. He's like, you know what, Todd, we've only had 10 people come to faith this past year at our church. He said, we've only baptized 3 people all year long. And he's just really discouraged. And he's just telling me, he's like, I don't know if we're really making a difference. And I said, Actor, if you look at those numbers, if you look at the 10 and the 3, you're always going to get discouraged. I said, but you need to shift your focus to influence. Your influence, your impact is so much greater than the 10 and the 3. You have no idea the impact that you're having on people's lives. You have no idea the impact and the influence that God is working through you in the lives of people that you're coming in contact with. But isn't it true? It's so easy for us sometimes to compare ourselves to others. It's so easy for us to get caught up in shame cycles and guilt cycles where we think, well, I'm not worthy, and I don't think I can make a difference, and I don't know if I can do that. And what God is saying to us is, listen, I know you feel inadequate. I know you feel insecure. But you're the light. You're the light. You are the church. And I need you sometimes to, sometimes the insecurity and the inadequacy doesn't leave. You got to take it with you. But I just need you to move past it, take it with you, whatever you have to do, and embrace your influence. You know what was so cool about influence? Is that influence is like a fingerprint. It's specific to you. You have influence that I will never have in your life. You have influence in your family members and your neighbors and your coworkers' lives that I will never have. Influence is specific to you. And this is what God is saying. If we're going to become the church that Jesus died for, we have to shift from feeling inadequate and insecure to embracing the influence that he's given us. Could you imagine if we actually did this? If we shifted from just existing in life, existing in our marriages, existing in our jobs, existing in life. Could you imagine if we just shifted from existing to becoming passionate followers of Jesus in every way? Could you imagine if we shifted from being a consumer, just thinking about our own needs, to a server, thinking about others? Could you imagine if we left behind the inadequacy and embraced our influence? What would happen? I believe we could change the world. You know why I say that? Because this is what the disciples did. You know, there were only 12 disciples. And I think there's a little bit more than 12 people here this morning. Could you imagine if we did this? See, this is what the disciples did. They said, you know what? We don't have the training. We don't have the experience. We don't have the education. But I'm going to move past that. I'm going to move past the inadequacy. I'm going to embrace my influence. I'm going to serve, and I'm going to live passionately to death. I'm going to give up my life for this cause. And guess what happened? They turned the world upside down, the scripture says. You know, I believe we can do the same. How about you? Hey, let's pray together. God, thank you so much for what you're doing in this moment. God, I just ask that you would stir our souls for you this morning. God, you're speaking to us. You're calling us to become the church that you sent your son to die for. And God, we just want to follow you. We want to leave behind the baggage, and we just want to follow you this morning. God, I pray during this response time that you would just allow us to just physically respond in faith to whatever it is that you're saying to us. God, I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. We're going to move into a time of response, and here at Mosaic, we do this every single week. We have a variety of different ways that we can respond, and we're just going to sing a couple songs, and we have communion up front here on either side. And maybe this morning you just want to go take communion. You don't have to be a member of Mosaic. You just have to be a follower of Jesus, and you want to take communion this morning. Just when you take that bread, just remember that bread represents the body of Jesus that was broken for you. When you dip it in the blood, would you just be reminded that juice represents the blood of Jesus that was shed for you? Would you just take a moment this morning and just think about and just remember God sent his son for you to die for you, to wipe away your past, to wipe away your guilt, to wipe away your shame, to give you a new, fresh start. Would you do that this morning? We have candles up front as well, and if there's someone that you're praying for, maybe there's a neighbor, a coworker, a family member that you're praying for, there's something going on in their life, would you just come up here and light a candle for them, and in faith just pray for them in that moment? We have a cross to your left-hand side. Maybe there's a place in your life this morning, God's just reminding you that you're existing. You're not passionate. And you want to make that shift to be passionate in that area of your life. You want to put that on the cross. Maybe you feel inadequate in some way. You want to put that on the cross and let today be a defining moment in your life of what God is doing inside of you. Would you stand together as we respond this morning?